Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, we're diving into a question that's been debated for, well, centuries, but usually with a lot of myths and not a lot of facts. So, does penis size actually matter? Let's find out what the science has to say. All right, let's just jump right in, shall we? If you strip away all the cultural stuff, all the locker room talk, what does the actual science tell us? From evolutionary biology all the way to modern psychology. You've definitely heard this one before, right? It's not the size that counts, it's how you use it. It's a classic. But does this old saying actually hold up when you put it under the scientific microscope? Or is the answer a little more complicated? Okay, to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to go back, like way, way back. We're going to start with our evolutionary history to figure out why this trait even became a thing for humans in the first place. So here's something pretty wild. When you put humans side by side with our closest primate relatives, one thing really stands out. We have the largest penis, not just in absolute size, but also compared to our body size. That's a huge clue that some kind of specific evolutionary pressure was at work here. And that pressure, it's most likely something called sexual selection. You've actually seen this in action before. Think about peacocks, right? The females prefer the males with the biggest, most stunning tail feathers. So the theory goes that over thousands and thousands of years, our female ancestors might have preferred mates with larger penises, and that meant those genes got passed on more often. But wait, it might not just be about attraction. There's another theory, a much more direct one. It's called sperm competition. Basically, a longer penis could have given a physical leg up, being better at displacing a rival's sperm. It's a bit ruthless, but it would have given that guy a much better shot at passing on his genes. So, okay, that's the whole evolutionary backstory. But what does that mean for us today, in the real world? Let's shift gears and look at the actual science of pleasure and see what it says about size and satisfaction. This is where things get really interesting because the data is, well, it's not super straightforward. There was one study that did find a link. It showed that women whose partners had longer penises reported having vaginal orgasms more often. The idea behind this is that it might be about stimulating the cervix and just the entire vaginal canal. But, and this is a really big but, it's absolutely crucial to know that not all orgasms are created equal. Science now shows us that vaginal and clitoral orgasms are totally separate things, neurologically speaking. They use different nerves, they light up different parts of the brain. So that makes drawing a simple line between penis size and overall pleasure, well, a whole lot more complicated. And just to add another wrinkle to all this, think about the famous G-spot. This super sensitive area, it's actually located only a few inches inside the vagina. That means it's pretty easily reachable for, the vast majority of guys out there. So what happens when you just ask people? Well, the survey data makes things even fuzzier. A lot of surveys with heterosexual women show that size just isn't the huge deal men think it is, and preferences are all over the map. But what's really interesting is that similar studies on homosexual men often show a much clearer preference for a larger penis. Okay, so we've looked at evolution, we've looked at pleasure, but what about that very first spark of attraction? Does size play a role in how attractive someone seems, even before anything physical happens? There was this really fascinating study back in 2013 that looked at exactly this question. Researchers basically created these computer-generated male figures and had women rate how attractive they were, and they did tweak all sorts of things, height, body shape, and flaccid penis size. The results were pretty surprising. So when they crunched the numbers from that study, a really clear pattern emerged. Of course, things like being tall and fit were important, but flaccid penis size also made a big difference. As you can see here, as the size on these computer models went up, so did the attractiveness ratings from the women. But, and this is the kicker, there was a very clear cutoff point. Once the flaccid size got bigger than about 7.6 centimeters, that's around 3 inches, the attractiveness ratings actually started to go down. It seems like there was definitely a too much of a good thing effect. So what does that tell us? Well, it really suggests that the most important thing might just be proportion. It makes sense, right? In the natural world, traits that are way too exaggerated can sometimes be a red flag for underlying health issues. So maybe a penis that just looks like it fits with the rest of a guy's body is what's seen as most attractive. Okay, so if it's not all about size, and we know that bigger isn't automatically better, Then what are the things that really matter? What actually predicts sexual satisfaction? Well, the main takeaway from pretty much all the research is incredibly clear. When you ask people what truly makes for great sex, the same three things pop up again and again: confidence, an enjoyable personality, and just mutual attraction. Basically, the person that penis is attached to is way, way more important. So let's circle back to our original question. Does size matter? The evidence says, yeah, it kind of does, in some very specific ways, like evolution and first impressions. But is bigger always better? On that, the science is a resounding no. The real story is so much more nuanced than that. And that's our deep dive into the science of penis size. As always, we really want to hear what you think. What was the most surprising thing you learned in our explainer today? Seriously, let us know down in the comments. And if you have any questions about the studies we talked about, drop them down there too. And of course, you know the drill. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss our explainers every single week. Thanks for hanging out with us.